Hi everyone, thanks for watching my videos, thanks for being here. I'm really enjoying sharing my experiences with you and keep the questions coming. I enjoy learning what people want to know about the birth of my youngest daughter in nature, and also just any questions that you have about birth. I have a lot of people who write to me and ask different questions about different aspects of birth, and so I'm looking forward to getting around to answering them all. Today's going to be about the placenta. So I've had a lot of people ask what I did with the placenta after my daughter was born. So with my first two births, they were both born in a birth centre, and I was quite ignorant about what they did with the placenta. Later on learned that they just treat it as medical waste and throw it away. But during the years, especially when I did my doula training, I learned a lot about the placenta, and I learned what a lotus birth is. So for those who don't know, a lotus birth is when you keep the placenta attached to the baby. You don't cut the cord, so it's not an easy thing to do, and I can understand why a lot of people choose not to do that. But there's a lot of spiritual reasons. There's a lot of sort of more energetic reasons around why someone would choose to have a lotus birth for their baby. For me, there was a few different things. I had my own spontaneous psychic healing. To put it in those kind of words, where I felt my energy field heal where my umbilical cord was cut. This is prior to conceiving my youngest too. And it was kind of a really profound experience for me. It just happened spontaneously one night. It was because I was probably immersed in my doula training, and I was learning a lot at the time, and I was doing a lot of healing, a lot of energetic healing. And I felt this sort of real sense of completion that I'd never felt in my life, this sense of wholeness. And the more I looked into how we treat the baby's organism, the placenta, and the baby psychically and energetically, I just came to a deeper understanding of why we would choose, or why someone would choose to do a lotus birth. And so to understand the placenta is to understand that it's actually made out of the baby's DNA and the baby's material. Of course, it's a combination of the mother and father's DNA, but the placenta is formed when the baby's when the egg's coming down the fallopian tubes and then embeds in the uterus. Some of the cells of the baby diverge and create the placenta. That's then the lifeline for the baby between the mother and the baby. So the placenta is the baby's body, as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't belong to me. It's an organ that's attached to the baby, so it's like having a liver or a kidney, or your stomach outside of your body, but it's still part of the baby's body, and it's integral to obviously creating life that's going to be born on this planet. So for me, I had this sense of it wasn't mine to do what I wanted with. That's not to say that as a parent I don't make decisions for my children, my babies, according to what I think is in their best interest. But I just felt this real sort of sense of sacredness around the placenta, that it was my baby's and that it was theirs to let go of when they were ready. So with the lotus birth, you keep the placenta attached to the baby. You don't cut the cord. There's a lot of care around it, kind of like keeping it dry, because it loses a lot of blood, so you have to wrap it up in old towels, and you keep it connected to the baby because the cord becomes quite brittle as it dries out and fried, and so it kind of necessitates also a very quiet period after the baby's born. It generally takes around 3 to 7 days for the cord to drop off naturally, and sort of there's a sense that when the baby's ready to let go of it and fully embody and incarnate onto the earth, that's when they'll let go of it. So with my third, which was the first one I did a lotus birth with, she let go of hers on the third day, which is very much her nature. She's just very came in, she's very independent, strong-willed, headstrong. All my kids are, because I encourage them to be very self-autonomous. But yeah, she was very quick to let go of hers, whereas Peru's my youngest. It took a whole 7 days. She's a much sort of, she's still fiery, but she's much more sort of a slow, methodical, isn't as quick to adapt to change. And so it was just this beautiful bonding time where you just keep the baby wrapped up with the placenta, and there's not a lot of movement. It's not necessarily a time for handing them around. It does require extra care when you're changing their nappies and changing their clothes and things like that. So that's, in a nutshell, what a lotus birth is. There's a lot more to it, and there's I'm going to put a link below to a lotus birth book. There's certainly a lot of information you can learn if you Google it. So that's what I did with my youngest two. That's what I did in the nature birth. So someone asked whether it was birth in the water, and no, I mean, it took another hour before I actually gave birth to the placenta, which was quite a long time considering in my other previous 3 births, within 20 to 30 minutes I'd birthed the placenta. I think, it's funny, in each birth or each pregnancy I had a different fear, sort of like some fear that would plague me. And in my 4th birth, because I knew I was going off and I was giving birth sort of remotely, even though I did have a lot of backup and contingency plans, I had this aberrant fear in my head that I'd go through the whole process and give birth to my daughter and it would be all like perfect, and then I wouldn't be able to birth the placenta and end up going to hospital anyway. So this was my strange fear that I had, and so yeah, it took a long time. I went out of the creek and was just on the rocks. I can't remember what I was on. I was on the yoga mat, but I think I was on a stool or something, and I just waited and waited and waited. And I was like, why is it taking so long? And eventually it came out naturally, but it was hard. It was hard because I was like done. I wanted to go home, trying to hold my baby at the same time, and like I'm exhausted and tired and still having to give birth to the placenta. Anyone who's given birth will tell you that you think when the baby comes out, that's it, you're done. Like, I'm giving birth to the baby and I can relax, and then the contractions start up again, and then you've got to birth the placenta, and that's just, you're like, oh my God, more, I've got to do more birthing. So that's probably the least fun part. But yeah, so it took an hour, and obviously that's why I didn't show it on the video. It's another hour footage. It was interesting too, because my eldest daughter, who was 13 at the time, she told me much later that she was really worried at that part. She didn't express it while it was happening, but afterwards she was like, I was really worried. I was scared that you were going to die and that you were going to bleed out. And, so it was really interesting to see that she picked up on my fear, that I wasn't voicing and I wasn't telling anyone. One of the things that I know, but I forgot when I was giving birth, is it's really important for the birthing woman to actually speak her fears out loud. There's power in actually articulating what we're feeling. And if you have a really beautiful support group, people around you, that they can be witness to your emotions and your feelings. So I'm sure that if I had actually spoken, rather than like trying to be the responsible and control one, if I'd actually spoken, like, I'm scared, I'm worried, this is taking longer than I thought. I don't know why it's taking longer than it usually does. I would have put at ease my daughter, who didn't express her fears until much later. But I also, would have just in the act of actually articulating and getting it out, I think that would have helped a lot. So I'm a big believer, if you're going through birth, or if you're supporting someone who's going through birth, is, really speak up about your fears or emotions, because it's often where a woman will get stuck in labour. Like if in labour her contractions slow down, or she stops progressing, very often it's because there's some kind of emotional thing that's going on for her, and whether she's conscious of it or not. and if she can speak or feel her emotions or express her emotions, or have a big cry or scream, or whatever it is that she's feeling deeply emotionally, or articulate a limiting belief. There's a lot of power in that, and then it, like in the release of it, gets things moving again on a physical level. So, what did I do with the placenta? Oh, so when we went back to our friend's home, who was staying at, who was very generous to host us for 2 weeks while we were giving birth, I had decided that with this pregnancy, I wanted to actually eat some of the placenta. So I knew about placenta encapsulation, and for anyone who doesn't know what that is, placenta encapsulation is something that's got a lot of wisdom and knowledge around it, and it's when they take the placenta, dehydrate it, and then grind it up and pulverize it, and then put it in little capsules, and the mother can take those to help her in her postpartum recovery. And there's other different schools of thought of what you can do with it. So that's become a more common service that a lot of doulas offer. But I didn't want to do that because, well, I wanted to do a lotus birth. So if you do a lotus birth, you can't do placenta encapsulation because basically it's like a piece of meat. It sounds really gross. It is. So it's kind of a meat that especially if you're in warmer climates, you're going to have to like salt it and keep it dry and let it dry out, because otherwise it can go quite rancid and it doesn't smell very nice. So yeah, just like any piece of meat, if it's just left out, you're not going to then eat it or encapsulate it by the time the baby's let go of it. It's better to take a fresh placenta and dry it out or freeze it and then dehydrate it and encapsulate it. So for me, it's like choosing between encapsulation or lotus birth. And because I very much respect my children, and I believe they come in as whole beings, and they're here on their journey, and it's not for me to control them or say what they do with their body. I wanted to really respect that. To me, their placenta is very sacred, and it's part of their journey of becoming an embodied human. So, but what I did want to do is eat a piece of it, and I was very fortunate in the way that when her placenta detached from my uterus wall, there's the part of the placenta that is attaching to the uterus wall. When it comes away, that part's kind of raw and ragged, and there was a big large chunk that I asked Nick to cut off. So it was probably about just enough, about palm size of my hand. And I said, so this was new to me. I'd never done this before, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to handle this. But I knew that there's a lot of nutrients. There's a lot of really healthy hormones. There's a lot of things that are in the placenta that are really, really, really good for the mother to help her in her recovery. If we look at nature, a lot of animals will eat the placenta after post-birth to give them strength. And I understand that obviously in nature, a lot of the reasons why the animal mother would eat it is because she's weakened and she's looking after newborns, and she can't go out and necessarily hunt for food, so she eats the placenta. That's not why we do it, but just knowing that it's really rich in nutrients, rich in hormones, and it aids the mother's recovery, I certainly wanted to try it for myself. So I said to Nick to make up a smoothie, to put it in a blender with as much berries as he could fit in it, so that it was red and from the berries, and I wouldn't be able to actually see that it was in there, and to disguise the taste as much as he could. And yes, I absolutely could not taste the fact that there was a big chunk of raw placenta in there. I couldn't taste it. Mentally, it's a bit hard to get over. So I knew it was in there. I still chugged it down, and I have to say, considering it was my fourth birth and I was a lot older, I was 39, my recovery after that birth was so much quicker than any of my other births. Physically, I still suffered postnatal depression with all except my first one. I had postnatal depression, so unfortunately it didn't help with that. But physically, I bounced back. Like my body just, felt stronger than I had ever felt after any of my other births. So I definitely feel like it helped me. And looking back, knowing how much it helped me, I probably would have saved a little bit more and eaten more of it. Like that was the only time, the bit that I ate, and the rest I just left attached to her. But I probably would have shared a little bit more of her placenta if knowing what I know now and how good it was for me. So then when her placenta, her cord dropped off a week later, we actually went back to the spot in the creek where we birthed her and buried it right where she was born. So I'd read a beautiful native Australian book, an Indigenous book called Under the Quandong Tree. I can't remember the author's name, sorry, and I can't find it in my bookcase anymore, but I'll find it and I'll put a link down below. And in the book it spoke about native Indigenous Australian women giving birth, and in one chapter, and it spoke about how from their Indigenous knowledge they believe that the placenta, and if you've ever seen a picture of a placenta, it's where the tree of life comes from. It's beautiful. It's got all these veins and it looks like arteries, and I mean they are arteries, but it's very arterial, and they believe that that's the baby's life map, or that's that person's life map. So what they do is they bury it in the ground, and then they have this belief that the earth then has their map, their DNA in it, and will always guide them throughout their life and hold them to their path in life. And the earth itself is connected to that child and reading the map of their life and keeping them on the right path. So I just thought that was a beautiful thing. I'm not saying whether it's true or not. We all have our beliefs, and everyone can get to choose their own spiritual beliefs. But I choose what works for me. I don't profess to have any ultimate answer for the meaning of life or what happens, why we're here and where we go after life. But I believe you choose the beliefs that serve you, and I just thought that was a really beautiful thing to do, and I'd really drawn a lot on sort of ancestors, every woman that had ever given birth in life before, to fortify me and strengthen me to give birth in nature. So I felt very connected, especially to the Indigenous women, the original owners of this land, who one of the oldest civilizations on this earth. And so we went back to where she was born and dug a very deep hole and buried it there, and then piled all the rocks back on it so it wouldn't be sought out by wild animals. And so that's where her placenta is. I think that was all about placenta. If you've got any more questions about placenta that you feel like I haven't covered, or that you're curious about, or you'd like me to expand on, put it in the comments below, and I'll bring it up in the next one. I actually do want to give a video on giving birth on native land. I think that's really important. That was a big part of my journey as well. So thank you for listening. If you liked this video and you found it informative, interesting, inspiring, please press the like button. The more likes it gets, the better it is for the algorithms, the more people get to see it. One thing I didn't mention was cord cutting. So the reason... No, I'm going to do another video on that, actually. I will do a whole video on cord cutting and the practice of cord cutting in hospitals, and why we shouldn't... why delayed cord cutting. And for a lot of people now, that's they have a bit of better understanding of that, but not everyone understands why cord cutting needs to be changed as a protocol in hospitals. So thank you very much. Subscribe and share this video if you think it will be informative or helpful to anyone you know, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.